Have you noticed how most men today care more about their Instagram feed than the legacy they'll leave for their kids? Harsh truth, but it's real. We're living in an era where masculinity has been traded for comfort, strength is seen as something to be ashamed of, and being a provider is treated like a joke. Meanwhile, your family is watching you, hoping for a leader, not a guy glued to the couch complaining. And this is where a name history never forgot steps in: Leonidas, king of Sparta. Not because he wore a crown, but because he carried courage. Now hold on, I'm not saying you need to grab a spear and head to war. The real battle is at home, in your daily grind, in the silent struggles no one else sees. And if you think what that man went through over 2,000 years ago has nothing to do with your life, brace yourself, because the truth is about to hit hard. In this video, you'll see how the same principles that turned a warrior into a legend can transform you into a strong, respected, reliable man, the kind of man others admire. And here's the best part: it starts today, with small actions you can take right now. So whether you're a father, a husband, or just a man trying to honor what runs in your blood, stick with me to the end. Because the story you're about to hear, it's not just about Leonidas. It's about the man you're meant to become. The early story. Before he became the king admired across Greece, Leonidas was just the third son of a king. And in Sparta's system, that meant he'd never inherit the throne, unless fate flipped the script. And it did. With the death of his brothers, Leonidas rose, not by privilege, but by merit. From a young age, he was shaped by the brutal training of the agoge, the Spartan system that turned boys into warriors. There, through sweat, pain, and silence, he forged his strength, his sense of honor, and the spirit of a true leader. It wasn't an easy path. He didn't inherit glory, he earned every step with grit and perseverance. While most men wait for opportunity to fall from the sky, Leonidas carved his way through the solid rock of discipline. He wasn't the strongest, but he was the most consistent, relentless. While others chased shortcuts, he walked the long road, the one that builds the kind of character only a real provider carries. And it was through that harsh road that Leonidas earned something money can't buy: respect. It wasn't the crown that made him a hero, it was how he lived before ever wearing it. His leadership didn't start on a throne, but in the daily choices, the internal battles, and the discipline that came long before he was called king. And that's where the lesson is: don't wait for life to hand you authority before you prove your courage. The world only follows those who've been tested on the battlefield, and the next battlefield Leonidas would face would demand everything he had. The 300s. When Greece faced the threat of an empire that seemed unbeatable, Leonidas didn't wait around. He didn't hide behind politics or pretty speeches. He drew his sword, handpicked 300 real warriors, men of strength, honor, and deep loyalty, and marched straight to the narrow gates of hell, Thermopylae. This wasn't just a fight. It was a statement. He didn't lead from the back, he stood shoulder to shoulder with his men. A true provider of courage to his people. Now think about it. How many bosses, how many fathers, how many men today face challenges head-on, leading from the front? Leonidas didn't ask anyone to die for him, he put himself on the line first. He led by example, something most modern leaders have forgotten. A real hero doesn't hide behind his title. He stares fear in the eye and shows the people around him what it truly means to be a man. Leonidas taught us that real leadership is born from personal sacrifice, not from the comfort of authority. And that applies to your home, your job, your family. Is it tough? Step up. Is it heavy? Carry more. The kind of man who's admired is the one who grips the wheel in the storm, the one who doesn't pass the blame. Be the kind of father your son looks at and says, "I want to be like him." Be the kind of husband your wife respects without needing to raise your voice. Leonidas didn't have a massive army, but his courage was massive. And that alone was enough to inspire generations. But what comes next shows he went even further than military strategy. Fighting for something bigger. When Leonidas chose his 300 warriors, he didn't pick just anyone, he chose family men. Men who knew what it meant to have something to lose. And that's exactly why they fought harder. They understood that holding that narrow pass meant buying time for the rest of Greece to prepare. They stood against more than 100,000 Persian soldiers with nothing but spears, shields, and the unshakable belief that honor was worth more than survival. Leonidas didn't lead from a distance. He was there, sword in hand, sweating, bleeding, fighting. A true warrior. The last line of hope for his people. One of the most powerful moments in that battle came when the Spartans, faced with so many arrows that they blacked out the sky, responded with calm irony. Good. Then we'll fight in the shade. That's not just heroic, that's posture. Even knowing they'd never return home, they didn't break. They held their line, fought non-stop for days, and managed to defeat thousands. Because Leonidas inspired that kind of bravery. His leadership ran so deep, his men were ready to die as heroes, with purpose. Now think about the impact of that. No social media, no cameras, yet their story echoed for centuries. A king was stopped by a handful of men driven by principle. So the next time you're facing a tough moment, a financial crisis, a betrayal, a health scare, remember, strength isn't about how much you can lift, it's about how you choose to stand. Leonidas didn't win by numbers. He won by spirit. And that spirit leads us to the next lesson. Sacrifice as a symbol of honor and legacy. The power of sacrifice. Leonidas knew. From the start, he knew that battle wasn't one he could win, it was one he had to endure. And still, he stayed. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He didn't send others to die for him. That's honor, doing what's right even when no one's watching, even when the world tells you it's pointless. While others try to save their own skin, Leonidas gave his life to protect what he believed in. And that sacrifice wasn't wasted. All of Greece rose up after seeing what those men had done. It wasn't speeches that sparked unity, it was action. When betrayal led the Persians to a secret path, Leonidas had a chance to retreat. Some of his allies did. But not him. He stood his ground with his 300. Why? Because a true provider doesn't abandon his post. He dies on his feet, if that's what it takes. This isn't about romanticizing death, it's about honoring responsibility. The man who understands his role, in the family, in society, in history, doesn't run from pain. He embraces it as part of his mission. Leonidas knew defeat was inevitable, but he also knew the time he bought there would save thousands later. And it did. The sacrifice at Thermopylae wasn't the end, it was the beginning of the comeback. The Spartans, with their courage, inspired all of Greece to unite, resist, and fight with purpose. Leonidas became more than a king, he became a symbol. His death planted the seeds of freedom. And this is where the modern man needs to stop and think. How many today are willing to sacrifice for something bigger than themselves? For their children, their values, their faith? Because that's the kind of strength we need now. The kind measured by what you give, not by how tough you look. The modern battlefield. The name Leonidas has echoed through centuries like a firm whisper in the ear of every man who longs to live with honor. He didn't leave behind castles, riches, or grand speeches. He left something far more powerful. Example. And the example of a true warrior that never fades. Leonidas embodied the archetype of a man who leads with courage, who protects his family and his land with his own life, who understands that being a provider is about more than paying bills, it's about building a life grounded in unshakable values. Today, when so many men are lost in vanity and emotional weakness, Leonidas's legacy stands like a lighthouse. He didn't need to prove his strength by shouting or intimidating, his presence was enough. And that's how real leaders are. They don't need to explain themselves constantly, their actions speak loud. Leonidas showed us that courage and sacrifice aren't outdated virtues, they're timeless. They're the traits that turn a regular man into someone respected. The kind of man a son wants to become and a wife naturally respects. Even after thousands of years, his name still carries weight. Because when something is done with honor, it becomes immortal. When you're remembered for what you stood for, not for what you owned, you become a symbol. And that's exactly what Leonidas became. The silent hero who did more with less, who chose death so others could live free. And it's this very essence, the warrior and provider spirit, that can, and must, be revived today. Because the real question now is, how do you live this out in today's world? Leonidas didn't have internet, bills to pay, or 9 a.m. meetings, but the principles he lived by are just as urgent now as they were then. Because when it comes down to it, being a man of value doesn't change with time. Today's battlefield looks different. It's the challenge of being a present father, of staying committed to your family, of keeping your word when it's hard, of not giving in to emotional cowardice. A modern provider may not carry a sword, but he carries discipline. He fights when he wakes up early to grind, when he says no to temptation, when he tightens the reins of his own life. Want to live like Leonidas today? Start by leading through action. Read books that build your mind, like The Art of War or The 48 Laws of Power. Train your body. Physical strength is still a universal language of respect. Look your wife and kids in the eye and say, "You can count on me." Be the shield of your household, even when you're exhausted. That's real leadership. An admired man isn't the one who shines only in victory. It's the one who shows up for the grind, the silence, the daily responsibility. Be the warrior of your routine. And above all, understand this: sacrifice isn't loss. It's investment. Every time you give up a moment of comfort for the sake of your family, you're planting legacy. Every time you choose to act like a grounded man instead of a wounded boy, you're teaching something lasting. Leonidas died once. But you'll be tested every single day. And it's in that consistency that the kind of man who changes generations is forged. Now that you know how to live with honor and strength, there's just one piece left to complete the circle, realizing that it all starts, right now, with a choice. So tell me, what kind of man do you want to be remembered as? The one who ran from duty, or the one who stood firm when everything said to quit? Because deep down, you already know. Your family doesn't need a spectator. They need a warrior. The world has plenty of opinions. What it's missing are examples. And if Leonidas could make history through courage and honor, then you can change yours through consistency, character, and daily leadership. How many times have you held back from becoming the man you were meant to be, just out of fear of failure, or of looking too harsh, or not being liked? It's time to change that. Start with the basics. Be present. Be strong. Be clear about what you stand for. Use your strength to protect, not to control. Be the provider who builds a true home. And if you feel like something's still missing, good. Because that discomfort is proof you're ready to grow. If this message spoke to you, then you already know what to do. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and stay with us. Here we talk about what really matters for men who want to live with purpose and power.